Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2022 Zurich Classic. And this is my preview show and favorite bets. And first off and foremost, thank you for stopping by. As always, I'm going to do a complete course breakdown. We're going to get into some models analysis, talk about the format as it is a partner event. As you see the power couple there on the front with Hovland and Morikawa being one of the groups. And we're going to do a quick recap of the RBC Heritage. With that said, let's talk some golf. First, I just want to introduce you to a company called Craftsman Golf. I've recently tried out a few of their products, and I was really impressed with the quality and thought, hey, with, of course, Father's Day coming, or if you're a golfer yourself, they make great gifts. What I got is, of course, you see the rangefinder cover up there. I got the scorebook cover, and then I got some wood head covers. But they've got all kinds of stuff, and I just recommend you, if you are thinking of a unique idea where you can get customized, get your name on head covers, or to give a gift for your dad or husband or whatever it is, go check out Craftsman's Golf at craftsmangolf.com. You will not be sorry, and priced very reasonably. And I'm working out see if they'll offer a promo code. I did notice if you log in on your first purchase, they're giving you 10% off if you give them your email address. So a pretty good deal. And like I said, I highly recommend giving them a look. Okay, so let's talk about the RBC Heritage, as it was not so kind to me, and I've learned some things that have kind of skewed my thought process and how I go into the RBC. And with that said, I'm actually just going to talk about it right now before I forget. So, of course, at the RBC, they had a hurricane there back in 2021 after the last RBC Heritage, which I think took out some of the trees and stuff like that made it as, of course, tight as it used to be. Of course, I played that course, as I mentioned, about, 5 years ago. And again, seeing it, what I could watch on TV, I think it's a little more wider open. They even mentioned, I think, on the coverage that a lot of the trees had to be trimmed and they lost some. Also, you got that they've moved back, been making the course a little bit longer than it used to be. What I learned and took away from this tournament is that ball strikers who cannot putt is a really good also to look at, especially from like the 7K range and below. And we'll talk a little bit about that even further. But let's talk about, of course, your two-time winner on Easter, Mr. Jordan Spieth, where I put 51 lineups in the big game, which, as you guys know, that's a little bit high for me in a large GPP, mass entry of 150. And I did not put one Jordan Spieth into any of those lineups. So you can imagine I didn't do so well. I did, I don't know, I think I had probably about 10 teams that, had like 5 to 6 or 6 to 6. But long story short, it was not productive. The only thing that saved my bacon was I did some good work on Showdown on Saturday and Sunday. And then all my bets that I had, none of those came to fruition either. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Jordan Spieth real quick. So I look at this tournament, and I think even Jordan would even state that it wasn't so much he went out and won this tournament. It was more that a lot of the guys that could have won kind of fell apart. And so if you think Jordan, I think he finished the tournament, 45 minutes an hour, posted his 13 under before the other guys. You had Shane Lowry, who had an amazing opportunity. I think he was 14 under going into 14. And then, of course, that's the par 3, the water on the right. In his mind, and maybe even his plan, he was like, I'm not even going to go at the pin near the green. I'm going to get it on the far left side, take my par, worst case bogey, and move on. Number 14 was playing the hardest, as it always does, but definitely even over the past 3 days before that. And of course, he, does move it left. He's in that coquina shell stuff. And he has an amazing short game, went down and just somehow either thinned it or just the way that ball came out. Of course, it hit the green and then went into the water, which totally evaded what he was trying to do, double bogeyed. And then really that, I think, threw him sideways. Now, of course, on 17, he had a putt. I think it was like an 8-footer to make birdie and get in the playoff. That didn't happen. And then he had another opportunity on 18. I don't remember. I think he had to chip it in. I don't even know if he was putting for birdie. I think he was chipping, if I remember right. But neither here or there. He didn't do it. Of course, Harold Varner was leading coming in. And it wasn't a shocker that Harold Varner, he had an amazing Sunday round the previous year. Of course, he had an amazing Saturday round. It is so hard to follow up those back-to-back rounds. So I was off on HV3 to actually pull it off. I think he shot 1 under for the day. Then you had the crazy guys. Well, real quick, while we're on Jordan, we'll just finish this up. So I wanted to pull up Jordan's past 5 outings at the RBC Heritage, and you can see his last 2, nothing to write home about. I mean, all the way back in 2013, which I didn't even check. I don't remember if that was his first year on tour or if that was even amateur status, but you can see progressively almost getting worse. And of course, that went as his game went. But what's really crazy is that Jordan Spieth right now, and we kind of knew this, or I did, and I'm sure most of you did, is ball striking the crap out of the ball. I think he's right now on tour in the 20s out of ball strikers, but as putting, one of the worst. And so again, it goes right back to look at really good ball strikers. And then if you even look at who led the first day with Cameron Young and Joaquin Niemann, and I kind of tweeted this out with, is there some correlation to the Riviera? And, you can make some arguments. I mean, Riviera is very flat. You got to be a very good ball striker. And, I didn't get into the complexity of the greens or whatever off the top of my head, but it's just very interesting. And you could see even on Sunday, you had 3 guys that are not known to be the plotters and the strategic players, guys that just hit the fairway, get on the green and make your putter, good chippers. And one was Cam Davis. Cam shot, I believe, 7 under on Sunday. And it's so funny at Showdown. I had some really good teams really looking at Cam Davis. But man, what you're seeing here, and I'm sorry about the graphics, not the greatest, but so he won the Rocket Mortgage, was it last summer in the playoff? And then there's been 18 tournaments he's played in since. So this is pulling up the last 20. And you can see everything he's been losing strokes on except for the putter, and, very abysmal. I think he missed 4 or 5 cuts within that time period. His best finish, if I remember off the top of my head, was at the Tournament of Century of Champions. He had a 10th, which I believe that was out of 38 guys. So, I mean, just nothing showing that Cam Davis would do well at this course, except, funny enough, again, great ball striker, typically not the best putter, even though you can see that's the only thing that is showing up as a positive over his last 20 tournaments. Now let's talk about the guys that I did pick and kind of fell apart. And the first one, right, was Chris Kirk. I mean, everything was pointing that Chris Kirk should do very well here. And he fell into the club of, tee to green, amazing. And I mentioned that, ball strikers are the guys that I might, focus a little more, at least on the lower end. But he lost 4.6 strokes putting. And so that's a little crazy. And the kicker is he had a shot on the 18th hole. He was even, and he had a, 5-foot putt that he had to make, and he missed it and missed the cut, 1 over. So he couldn't make his par. And then, of course, the other guy that killed me, and probably a lot of you, those 2 guys, Russ Henley, same thing. First day, did well. Second day, of course, in the wins, which I don't think Russ is that great of a win player by any stretch. But same thing. Over the 2 days, off the tee, gained almost 2 strokes. On approach, gained over a stroke. Lost 4 strokes putting. And the one thing that Russ Henley is usually is a pretty good putter, especially on Bermuda. He also had a 5-foot putt. He was even at 18, had a 5-foot putt, missed it, was 1 over, missed the cut. So also he had Streelman, which I didn't get into his stuff, but that was the other guy that killed me and probably killed us both. The one thing that, the last thing we'll talk about the RBC Heritage is I want you guys to take a look at, kind of the leaders here. So this is 13 under to 11 under and what they did. And the other thing I tweeted out is I mentioned, some Jordan Spieth magic, right? So he chipped in on Sunday. I think he chipped in at least 4 times during the tournament out of the sand for either a birdie or eagle. But I know for a fact that on Sunday he chipped in on number 2 for an eagle. He had a long eagle putt, which doesn't show into these because it was off the green. That was on 5 for eagle. I think it was like 22 feet. But it was crazy. Him and Cantley both just could not putt. And they just, still amazing enough, lucked out. And so you can see from a ball striking, everything that I had on my model was exactly correct. I might up it a little bit on ball striking and totally just wipe out anything with putting. Now, again, can you get it done that way? Look at Matt Kuchar. I mean, he ended up what was one of my picks, 12 under, lost off the tee against the field because he doesn't have the distance. Lost on approach, but gained around the green and gained over 7 strokes with a putter. The other guy that, I had, of course, was Shane Lowry, was, one of my top 5. not the greatest off the tee, but gained, I think he led the field up. I think about you second against Cantlay on approach and gained with the putter. But around the green, which is kind of odd that he didn't do well. So if you want to look at, pause it. If you want to see what these other guys did very well or whatever, I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on it. All that I took away, one of the big things I took away is that my mindset of, it's Harbor Town. Let's just look at the guys that hit the fairways, good with the irons, really good around the green, and decent putters. That's gone from my mental standpoint. And it didn't help that, but the night before or the day before or the day of, Munoz got pulled out. So then we were a little bit scrambling to replace him. You also had, of course, Mr. Chad Johnson, Zach Johnson. I don't know why I called him Chad. You had Mr. Zach Johnson, our fearless U.S. Ryder Cup captain, played at 9 holes, 12 holes, and then pulled out of the tournament. Now, the good news is I had him literally on one of those teams, and that was it. So that didn't affect me. It was just I can't stand playing Zach Johnson, and there you go. All right. And also you can see with out of this top echelon, the top 11 players, of course, this was first to T3, I believe. Maybe T4. Let me see here. I'd be third, I guess T4. I had 2 players that were in my top 15. Oh, and then just another quinky dink. I mentioned, I picked Brian Stewart in my below 7K. And literally after the first 2 days, he led the field on approach. And I think he ended up losing like 4 or 5 strokes putting, which that is not Brian Stewart. So that also did not help. All right, enough whining. We're off to RBC Heritage. I'm a little upset because typically I do very well at this tournament. But things adjusted and changed. And when you start to look at this leaderboard, you're looking at a lot of guys that are really good ball strikers and have distance. You can look at like a JT Poston, maybe Fitz. But the rest are, pretty good ball strikers that aren't the best putters. Now, Straka's been putting well or better as of late. Cameron Young, I haven't really pulled up all his stats. But him and Neiman, right? I also picked Neiman, and he must have been just below here. I think he came 10 under, somewhere around there. It was, like I said, it was just shocking that those guys, who I felt when I picked Neiman, might be a bit off the curve. But all right, enough on the RBC Heritage. I'll be go a little different next year, and we'll see how it works out. All right, so let's kind of change our mind of scope and now focus on the Zurich Classic. We have a new tournament, and it is a totally kind of different tournament, right? This is the only partner tournament except for QBE Shootout, which QBE is I think it's not even close to, I think it's like 35 teams, or so it's a lot smaller. It's not as high of teams, but there is some teams that do play in the QBE Shootout that will be here. Just off the top of my head, Billy Horschel and Burns have played in the QBE. Of course, we are right out of New Orleans. We are in Avondale, Louisiana, which if you pull up Google Maps, there is like nothing around this course. But it was opened back in 2004. The teams event started in 2017. So there are guys like Billy Horschel who have won this event. Even Brian Stewart actually won this event when it was an individual, regular PGA tournament. And like I said, it switched and went to this team format, which is cool. I mean, it's something different. Your Architect, of course, we're back on a Pete Dye course. Now, out of the Pete Dye courses, I would say this is one of the easier ones. I don't want to say it's not the typical Pete Dye course, but it is a Pete Dye course. They dumped $2 million in renovations back in 2019. It is a par 72, and it's a little bigger boy course. I mean, it's 70 plus 7,400 yards, 7,425, same as last year. Nothing's changed there. Of course, you're on Bermuda fairway, so a little bit like back in the Florida swing. And the rough is going to be a little more penal than we saw at RBC. It is 2 inches of Bermuda rough. We're back on the Tiff Eagle Bermuda, which we saw at almost every tournament that was played in Florida. So TPC Sawgrass, the Players, the Honda. I even believe Arnold Palmer was Tiff Eagle, burnt out Tiff Eagle, but it was Tiff Eagle. But this one is going to have an overseat POA, which we just saw at RBC Heritage. All that means is they do that if for some odd reason they get a couple of really cold nights, they don't lose the greens, but it really doesn't affect how the greens should flow. I already mentioned the player field is 80 teams, and the top 35 teams in ties make it into the weekend. So there is a cut. Historical cut line over the past few years is somewhere between 5 under to 7 under. And winning score, if you look over the past few years, somewhere between 22 to 27 under. Average green size, I'd say a little bigger than average here. It's about 5,200 square feet are the size of the greens. If I remember correct, there is a little bit more slope. Well, comparative to what we just saw, there'll be quite a bit more slope and undulation. You've got a ton of sand bunkers here, and you got those long sand bunkers that follow the fairways, and you got the pop bunkers that you know as Pete Dye. And we'll look at some images, but you got 106 of those. You've got 8 holes that come into play into water. So like a Pete Dye bringing in the water, just like we saw at RBC. I don't have a stimp meter reading, but from what I saw from past conditions, I would say these greens are average fast. I mean, RBC, they had them a little bit slower. I'd say these guys are going to run between 11 and 12. Your course defense, of course, you got the wind, water. We are off the Gulf of Mexico, not too far off, so wind can be a factor here. I already mentioned how much 8 holes that come into play in water. You've got a tree line course, but not as tight by any stretch than RBC. A ton of sand. And one thing that was interesting, like I said, after this event, there was a hurricane that came across Ida, I believe it was. And there was a tree in the middle of number 11 fairway that was lost. And I think they lost a ton of trees, but they, I guess, planted recently 400 new trees. So I just thought it was an interesting tidbit coming from the superintendent. And then Pat's notes that I put down, this is a little bit of a hard thing, but you can figure this out. Or I know a little bit of this for you guys. Team chemistry really does show up here. Guys so just so you know, if you didn't pick your teams, people that are eligible to play in this, the PGA or whatever will just assign you a teammate. So that does happen. I'd say it's pretty rare. I'd say 75% of these teams were already put together or they already kind of agreed to play together. And we'll talk a little bit about that. There's also a lot of strategy that goes in. So if you look at like a Sam Burns, Billy Ho, they sat down and teams will do this, figure out who's going to tee off on what hole so that they get to, tee off on other holes. So what fits their game best, like hence Billy Horschel, typically a really good par 3, long par 3 player. And so when him and Sam Burns played here last year, they sat and figured it out. So, when they do alternate shot, which is, and we'll go over that. I believe I have it here. Yeah. So it looks like alternate shot is on Friday, Sunday, if you make the weekend. Worst case, all teams are going to get to play each format. So it starts off as best ball. And what all that means is both guys play their ball, and whoever has the best score for that hole, that's what they take. And then, like I said, alternate shot is I hit a tee shot, you hit the approach, the other person hits the chip, so on and so forth. The other one hits the putt. And that's when that team strategy comes in. Things that do show up is, teams that are coming in with both players having pretty decent form, good recent form, seems to be, pretty prevalent. Ultimately, the guys that I'm looking for, yes, I want good ball strikers and all that, but really I'm looking more for the putting and around the green. That tends to show up here a lot. Of course, Cam Smith has won this event twice with different partners. First year that it was a team event, he won with Jonas Blix, who I think is like on the Korn Ferry Tour, if he's even doing that. And of course, last year he won with Mark Leishman. I think that's about it. All right, so some quick info that I pulled from last year's event, just to give you an idea. Again, if you're new to this tournament or new how this kind of works, the 4-ball, which is both guys playing their ball, of course, scores are going to be quite a bit lower, and you could see, somewhere around 65 to 66 is what the combined teams will shoot. Because, of course, if one guy's out of the hole, hopefully your other partner picks you up. So one guy shoots a double bogey, hopefully the other guy at least gets a par. Where it gets a little trickier is in foursomes. I, for whatever reason, don't have that number, but you can see it goes up. And it's just because, right, it's hard to get in a groove. Maybe, what typically shows up too is it's not a bad thing to pick guys that have very similar skill sets, right? So there's the ham and egg of, hey, I want a guy that really, crashes the ball off the tee, and then the other guy being a putter. Well, that's good for a scramble. But I think for this event, you want somewhat like skill sets, hence Mark Leishman and Cam Smith. Very similar. They both could get a little wayward with the driver, but typically pretty good with the irons, really good around the green, and both great putters. If you look at Sam Burns and Billy Horschel, almost very similar. If you go down there, especially over their stats for the last 6 events, they've been very similar. Of course, Burns hits it maybe a little further off the tee, but both pretty accurate, both good ball strikers, both pretty. I'd say Billy Ho's better on the green, and then maybe Burns a little better putter, but they're both pretty good putters, especially on Bermuda. So anyways, that's a little information there. And then just so you can see your past champions, I already mentioned, of course, it's not on here. 2020, the event was canceled due to COVID, but in 2021, Mark Leishman and, of course, Cam Smith won. But before that, you had John Rahm and Ryan Palmer who won. You had Billy Horschel and Scott Piercy won the year before that. Then there's Cam Smith and Jonas Blix. And then we can go down and just see guys, individual winners here. Brian Stewart, Justin Rose, Sungyeol Noel, Billy Hull again, so you're going to see him a bunch. Jason Duffner, Bubba Watson, and Jason Bone, but we don't have to worry about him. So if you want just a quick understanding, get a little visual understanding of what this course looks like, if you've never seen this event, the first thing you'll notice is it's a party. You're going to see Absolute here, to get drunk. You can go over here to get drunk on Absolute. You go to Buffalo Trace over here. You got Michelob Ultra, craft beer tent. I mean, they are partying here. So that's the first thing. But really what I wanted to talk about is you can just see the water and how they run these holes kind of back and forth through the water. Anywhere you see this lighter, that's all sand. So you got a ton of that following you everywhere. And yeah, to probably get a better visualization of this, give you a couple of looks. So, here's some of that undulation and hills I was talking about, and the pot bunkers, and there's the water following. I don't know if that's 18, but of course you also had last year. Well, let's go back. So here's 18, the finishing hole. And so I mentioned that it went to a playoff last year. And of course, in the playoff was Louis Oosthuizen and Charles Schwartzel, which both South Africans. And if you didn't see it, of course, Louis had the tee ball and drove it, and they were playing alternate shot. And that's what you would play in the playoff on Sunday. And he drove it in the water, and pretty much it was kind of funny. I think Cam still had to make a pretty decent putt to make a par. It wasn't over, but pretty much it was over after Louis decided to hit a slice, somewhat, a power fade into the water. Anyways, here's one more look. Again, you can see those kind of knoll pot hills. You can see the tree lines. Again, water running. And like I said, they run these holes on the water that is available. All right, real quick, we can go through the scorecard. So nothing changed in yardage from last year. And very typical, as I always state to you guys, you get 6 birdie opportunities and you're going to get 6 bogey opportunities. It's got a pretty gentle handshake with the second easiest hole on the course. And actually shows up as a number 1 would be this par 5, number 2 hole to make a birdie, possibly an eagle. Saying here your best eagle chances on number 5, the par 5, 561. And is the easiest hole on the course. And then, of course, 18 is another par 5 to have that opportunity to make a birdie to come in. And then, of course, the other course defense that I didn't mention that I should have probably brought up, but I'll tell you now, is these par 3s. They are all over 200 yards. Let me confirm that, but I'm pretty sure that is correct. Yep. And you're going to see there's some of the hardest holes on here. So in the model that I do look at, we'll look at some of the guys that do well on the par 3s. And then here's the official scorecard for the upcoming event, and everything is right dead on what I just showed you. All right, so I did, of course, create a model, and this is the part where I'm going to tell you real fast. How do you win here? What do I think it takes as a partnership event? What are we looking for? And of course, you had Team Mullet here last year. I thought that was awesome. And of course, you win these pretty cool like WWF belts, better than a tartan jacket, if you had to ask me. And so what I'm kind of looking for, there's some intangibles. I mentioned team chemistry, really enjoying it, have a good time, embrace this kind of event. I think there's some teams that are, like I said, that are pushed together that they really don't have a shot. But these guys that have played together, that are friends, went to college together, I think that makes up really the teams that typically win this. It's a little unique. I mean, even from I like the leverage stroking analysis, but a lot like the WGC match play, it is some bit helpful, but nowhere near as helpful, I think, is our usual tournaments. But what am I looking at is ball strikers. Yeah, that's going to be my number one. I mean, we need guys that are really good off the tee, approach, all that. But really, then the next thing, like I said, is the putting in the short game around the green. You're always going to need good irons. So we'll see the guys who do that. And then off the tee, I'm kind of putting is the fifth one in. Really, ball striking includes, the iron play and also off the tee. There is some procs to the pins that do show up here. I don't know if this is because, I mean, yes, it's a little longer course, not super long, but, over 7,400 yards. But I think because a lot of guys, of course, there's a bit of like a scramble, but if your partner is in good shape and you're the next one up, and typically you wouldn't go for the green because you're 260, 270 out, well, you're going to take that shot because you already know your guy's good. And if you blow up, you're going to take the risk to go for the eagle. So the 200 plus does show up quite a bit, hence the ball strikers. That comes up 30% of the time, which is a super high number and very kind of unique. Then next would be procs to the pin. 100 to 125 comes up 15% of the time. So those are the two that I'm going to put in the model. You've got 4 par 5s here, but there's 3 of them between 550 and 600, so I'm going to throw that in. And then I mentioned those 4 par 3s that are 200, 225. And then, of course, we're going to look for people that, guys that can make birdies and eagles, right? Or who has been over the last, at least 3 tournaments or so. All right. So with that said, I did create a custom model. And what I've tried to do is if I see a team on these models that are a team, I'll call it out, or you can look for this little yellow star here. But I guess while I'm thinking of this, one thing I did not mention, what is unique about this from a DraftKings fantasy perspective, from a DFS perspective, is that if you pick, let's hypothetically say, for your team, you pick Cam Smith, well, you're going to get whatever that team's points are. What I mean by that is, Cam Smith and Leishman birdie that hole. You get that. Now, here's the kicker. And I didn't really, because last year, if I remember correctly, was the first year DraftKings actually did a DFS thing. Usually it was just, you could bet on it, and that was about it. But, of course, they have figured out how to do these kind of team events. And what I'm getting to is what kind of threw me off a little bit, and it kind of made sense. If you really like a team, then you should take both guys because they're both going to get, really good points. Now, where I was kind of, from my strategy perspective, and it's a little bit hard, right? Because if you take some teams that are all higher up, then, you can't build that way. But what I did is I kind of spread it out, and went, well, I'll take, I like Cam Smith and I like Leishman. So I'll take one of those guys. And oh, by the way, I'm going to take the cheapest. But what they kind of got on, what I can see is I think they made the pricing exactly the same. And I don't know if it was that way last year. I feel like, and I could be wrong, that pricing was maybe a little different for each player depending on who it was. So I need to check that. I might be incorrect. But long story short, the only thing I'm trying to get out of that is you can take both guys. At least last year you could. I haven't actually tested it out yet. And you're going to get both their points. So that's one thing that was a little interesting. But anyways, what you're looking at here is, this is recent form where my last 12 rounds, and there's the model. You can see the ball striking, putting around the green. You can see the weighting. And when I rank these guys, you can see my top 15 players under recent form. You had Lowry number 1, Bradley, and then the only 2 that I could, confirm. I take that back. You also got Cantlay and Schauffele, Burns and Horschel. I think are the only 4 guys or 2 teams that go into my top 15 under recent form. I don't think, like I said, I tried to go through this and make sure. I might be incorrect, but what I saw is, so that's kind of a rarity. And that's something that I'm kind of, from a modeling perspective, that's what I'm going to be looking at is, what kind of skill sets are their team, and then how are they doing from a stroke gain analysis. But honestly, a bit of my picking, just like I recommend for you, pick the guys and the teams that you like, honestly. Don't go so heavy on the stroke gain analysis. All right, then I did one more with 24 rounds, taking a little larger sample in, and trying to see here. Oh, this is what it was. So I wanted to show you, I guess, what I did is I pulled the guys that are on the same team and had the best ranking on my model under 24 rounds. So, of course, Morikawa and Hovland, ranked 10th, 17th. Cantlay, Schauffele, 4th and 18th. You can kind of get the gist. The lowest would be McIntyre and Svensson, right? No. They messed this up here, or DraftKings got funny. So if I remember correctly, it's Bobby Mack, and Martin Laird is one team. And then Adam Hadwin and Svensson is the other team. So you got Hadwin, what I thought was unique, came up number 1 over the last 24 rounds under my model. And he'd be paired with Adam Svensson, who's really a really good ball striker, which you can show up here, top 29. He's just a brutal putter, which also shows up here. And on a side note, I did, I don't know if I actually picked him my bottom 5, but I told a lot of you guys, he was kind of my alternate player for Munoz, and that worked out pretty good. Just back to the RBC real quick. All right, anyways, you can get a look at, from a team perspective, who's the best ranking in my model. What do I got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams. All right, so if you also want to look at who's the best ball strikers over the last 24 rounds, again, take a little bigger sample. And I did pull up the guys that were on the same team in the stars. Of course, no shocker, Victor Hovland and Morikawa. That's going to be interesting. For me, I'm a little worried about the short game and the putting with those guys. So I don't know from a DFS perspective. I'm not betting on them because, I think they're like 6-1 or something like that. But even from a DFS perspective, I got to get into that tomorrow. But I might be kind of fading these guys. But I do like Joaquin Niemann and Mito Pereira at 9,200. You can see 22nd and 6th. Of course, they're roommates. They're both from Chile. They know each other very well. And I think they would have an amazing chemistry and would be a good team. And Mito Pereira has been putting better on Bermuda. That doesn't show a whole lot. But you can see where they would probably both lack is maybe not the best putters. Okay, and on that note, who is some of the best Bermuda putters over the last 24 rounds? And funny enough, Martin Trainer comes up number 1. It's about the only thing that he is showing up very highly on, and it's good on long par 3s. Of course, Cameron Smith, no shocker. It's funny. Well, also why I forgot to mention Cameron Smith at RBC Heritage. He was not a pick of mine, and so that worked out kind of well. But I honestly, I don't know how much you guys got to watch of that on Friday, but I did tweet it out, like a little 2-3 foot putt he had where it literally looked like he was trying to miss it. Like that guy looked like he was 100% trying to not make the cut and just get a weekend off, which I don't know why he wouldn't have done that anyways. I was so shocked that he played after, what he went through at the Masters. Again, sorry, a little bit off topic. Back to the good Bermuda putters. You can see no shockers, Kisner, Todd. Terrell Hatton, if you went and pulled up his last 12 rounds, he would not be this highly ranked. So this is taken in, of course, the whole Florida swing. Seb Straka has been putting better. Hadley's typical. Merritt, Horschel, Noren, Burns. So here's the highlight. The guys, 2 best putters on Bermuda over the last 24 rounds. No shocker, Billy Ho and Sam Burns, which, of course, I mentioned they played at QBE. They played this last year. They're also good friends. I kind of feel like it's funny, like Billy Ho is like the captain of the team and feel like he might dictate a lot of the things that go on, but neither here or there. Then you got Fleetwood, Stallings, Herbert, and then Scheffler at the very bottom. All right, because we're on a Pete Dye, even though I don't feel like this is, how do I put it, a typical TPC Sawgrass or Harbor Town, but there is some Pete Dye-ish things to it. We, just wanted to see who, has had the best, kind of record as of late, or at least over the last 6 tournaments they played in at Pete Dye courses. This would be pulling up, like I said, TPC Sawgrass, even the, I'm going to mess this up, Kiowa, right, where they had the PGA, I think even gets pulled into this. But anyway, Shane Lowry, Cantley, Garcia, which I think Garcia and Fleetwood is an interesting team. But I don't like their odds. I looked at it, I was excited. I think they're 16-1. But Garcia's had some pretty good success even on this course. And Fleetwood's been playing good golf. You got HV3, of course, Pete Dye's had a lot of success at RBC specifically. You got Patty Kazar. Don't worry about this guy, this Colin Turin or whatever. He's got 1 round on it. So just he had a good 1 round. But anyways, you can see some of the Pete Dye specialists that pop up here. And then let's look at proximity to the pins. So the main one, right, was at 200 plus out. Also, again, I highlighted the teams that showed up, and really the only ones that both of the guys showed up. Again, Victor Hovland, Morikawa, not a super shocker. But you can see Will Z, it's number 1. Aaron Rai, Shane Lowry, Taylor Moore, and Aaron Rai. I don't know. I can look really quick. Let me see if I can figure this out. All right, so no. Aaron Rai and Taylor Moore are not teams. They're priced the same. I just wanted to look into that real quick. Smotherman, I told you guys I really like him. kind of a poor man, Will Z, Tyler Duncan, Glover, Chappell. So guys that are really good over the last 6 tournaments, 24 rounds, 200 out. And then I also pulled up that 100 to 125 for you. And 2 guys on the same team, Ian Poulter and Shane Lowry, pop up on that statistic. And then you got, funny enough, Scott Stallings over the last 6 tournaments, 24 rounds, is leading in that category from 100 out, which is interesting to me. You got Shoffley, Hoagie, Villajagas, Smith. You can read the rest of these guys. But I didn't recognize anyone else, as in both players on the same team falling into that category. All right, so with that said, I'm going to go over my favorite bets and then my long shot, and then I'm going to get you guys out of here. It's going to be a little quicker show because, like I said, I just think the stroke gain stuff, you can do a little bit with it, but it's such a different format that much to keep going. Like comparable courses, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go into that detail. There are comparable courses, but it just ain't going to make sense in this format. All right, so the number one guys that I have already, all these I have bets on already, and I did it this morning without doing any analysis. So, of course, Team Chile, 25 to 1. I like Joaquin Niemann and Mito Pereira. Both been playing great golf. Mito's still waiting for that first win, but playing good. Had a good RBC. Of course, Joaquin Niemann also had a decent RBC. You know, had a kind of worked his way up. Well, he was up there on Thursday and worked his way back like a Cameron Young on Sunday. But, of course, you had Joaquin Niemann win the Genesis at the Riviera. So they're 25 to 1. Okay, moving over to the team that, you know, I think a lot of people are going to be, looking at. No shocker, 12 to 1. I mean, and these are all from DraftKings Sportsbook. I went to PointsBet when I was doing this, and they didn't have up any odds. I don't know if they're going to have odds for it. So I just put my bets in through Sportsbook. I didn't worry about the odds. DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, so of course you got Louisiana local Sam Burns. You got Billy Ho, who's won the team event here. He won individual event here, so knows the course super well. These guys, even last year though, they were thought to be favorites, and they, if I remember correctly, they did make the cut, but they were not up there. And then Ryan Palmer, who won it with Mr. John Rahm, and then you got Scotty Scheffler, who everything he plays in recently he wins. So I put a bet on those guys 9 to 1. Of course, that's Team Texas, and it should be a good comment. I mean, both great ball strikers. Ryan Palmer has been struggling with the putter, but can get hot. And of course, we already know what Scotty Scheffler's been doing. And then the next 3 bets that I got in there, I like Max Homa and Gooch. I don't know what, of course, Homa's from California. Gooch is Oklahoma. I think that's right. I don't think he went to Oklahoma State, though. It doesn't matter. Both really good players, both great ball strikers, both decent putters. I mean, could get super hot. I just like that pairing, 22 to 1. And then what it was interesting to me was Straka and Grayson Sigg. I think, was what way Straka's playing and been putting good, and Grayson Sigg, has some decent outings. If I remember, wasn't him. It doesn't matter. I like these guys together, and from 50 to 1, I want to take a shot on those guys. And then I thought it was interesting, this team here with Bramlett and McNeely. I mean, if you know Joseph Bramlett, right, he crushes the ball off the tee. Actually, I think shot 8 under at the RBC Heritage on Sunday, moved way up the board. It was a super shocker. I think, again, a player that I would have never picked to do well or have even a good round like that at RBC. So good form, and typically he's a terrible putter. Under the recent form, I got him with McNeely at 90 to 1. And Matt McNeely, we all know, got also length off the tee. I'd say, a good around game, right? I mean, waiting for him to get his first win sometime this year. And then my long shot team with really no reasoning whatsoever. I didn't, give you a bunch of stroke gain stuff. If you look at, if I remember this correctly, I think Alex Smalley had a good showing at Sanderson Farms, which I think is a good comparable course. And then you had Hayden Buckley, who had a good showing at the Houston Open, which also is a pretty good comparable course. But that's about it. I mean, I just know these guys. They can, they're Korn Ferry grads, both very talented, pretty good from a showdown perspective. So that was my long shot that I put out there, 151. But from a DFS perspective and a betting perspective, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot. This is probably all the betting I'm going to do. And then from a DFS side, I'm going to throw some teams together for fun. But it's been a little nutty with the Masters, RBC. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break at the Zurich. But definitely I'll do some DFS. And I'm going to do the picks for you guys tomorrow. So with that said, that is my show. Of course, you got Joel Damon there teeing off. It's a pretty cool picture. Hey, guys, do me the favor, click that like button, share it with anybody else. I would appreciate that greatly. And if for some odd reason you're checking me out for the first time at the Zurich Classic preview, hit that subscribe button. I do 3 shows a week. This one, yeah, I'll probably still do 3 shows. They're just going to be a little lighter. And hit me up on Twitter. I've been, again, funny enough, increasing my Twitter following. And so that means I'm going to tweet more and anything that I see that makes sense. So with that said, guys, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll put the picks out and have a great evening.